Joshua Harris. My name is Joshua Harris. Let's talk about ego today. How do you think ego plays in our relationship?
I think
Hello? Where's your ego? I'm just kidding.
well, I think the main role is giving us individual identity. But in our relationship, I think our ego plays our different roles as far as like our energy, like masculine and feminine. I think that's the main role it plays, because if we had no ego, we would say, I'm just a being, I'm not even a man. That's part of
Egoless, yeah.
If you're completely egoless,
You're just a being.
You're just a being. You're
Yeah.
not a man. You don't identify with anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the main thing is to create a dynamic of energy.
I agree with that. But I think also it plays a lot in negative way too. Like our ego that's conditioned by growing up in certain cultures and in childhood, how we grew up, that really plays a role a lot in our relationship. Like for me, it's like sometimes my ego just came to the surface and I want to feel right. I think that's also ego, you know? Like there's no right or wrong anything in relationship. It's just it's just different, you know?
I think the ego is rooted in all pain and pleasure. And like with me saying that, what I mean is like your happiness can rely on your ego. In this material world, like when you get things or when you achieve things, that's just feeding your ego. But it can make you feel like a sense of purpose, or it can make you feel good about yourself.
Or uniqueness.
And also anything that goes against your ego is resulting in pain. Like it's either suffering or it's damage or it's breaking down like an identity that you think you have. So like you said, it neither is good or bad. It's just, it is.
But I think that we should strive for egoless as much as you can, just because of the fact that we all always gonna be ego being. Nonetheless, it's just nature in this physical form.
Yeah.
So we always gonna have ego. And I think that in modern society, because we don't have to hunt anymore, we don't have to hunt for food anymore, ego is just very strongly connected to survival. And we don't really have to survive in that way, the way of back in the day anymore. We don't have to hunt animals anymore, right?
Yeah.
Food is so accessible. So I think that a lot of ego comes with survival instinct. And it's not really, it has a kind of like, has less purpose in modern society these days. So that's why I think that we should strive for dropping ego more, because a lot of times egos kind of restricted us to be the most authentic self, or to be mindful and be understanding.
It has less purpose, like you said, in today's modern world, but it's more prevalent than ever because of media.
Ironically.
Yeah, and if ego is gonna exist in our relationship, how do we make it work towards us?
Can I interrupt you for that?
Sure.
You just said the good point about it that's connected to the I said, like ego has less purpose. Because of that, we trying to compensate. How can we use this ego? Because we don't have to hunt anymore. So that it's our human nature, you know? How do we incorporate this ego in what ways? And then there's no way we have to use it for something else, right?
Because there's not just survival. There's all these different social constructs.
Yeah, so maybe it's that.
I'm a man. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a weightlifter.
I have this amount of money
Yeah.
in my bank account, you know, or I'm like my aesthetic, I'm flashy, you know?
And it's the root of our modern downfall.
Yeah, because we don't have to survive in that way anymore. So maybe that's why it evolved in that way.
But if it's gonna exist in our relationship, how do we use it?
How do we use it with our ego?
How do we use ego? What role is it?
What do you think?
I think it's back to what I said at the beginning of the video.
Our energy balance?
Well, here's the thing. Ego exists, it's not going anywhere.
It's
unless
not.
you dedicate your life to eliminating ego.
Or you're Buddha. You just meditate all day and then reach the enlightenment, egoless state.
I think we should all strive to reduce it and make sure it doesn't get in the way of our development. But while it exists, I feel like there's parts of the ego that, like especially in a relationship, that could be supported, I guess. Parts of the ego that could be not deemed bad in support for that energy balance I was talking about. So like if you do like if I want to stay masculine and you want to stay feminine as far as roles in a relationship, like I'm taking the initiative on lead and vision and things like that, and you're more nurturing when things get tough and you know, supporting that role. I think if we see those as aspects of our ego because we're identifying with those two different behaviors, we can create a bond that's stronger.
I agree on that, but at the same time, I do want to initiate too. So doesn't mean that I'm out of ego or out of energy, because honestly, those things always evolve, in my opinion. The things that I want to is always evolving. Things that you want is always evolving. Our relationship evolving, life is evolving, everything is evolving,
so
right?
You're saying...
I think that is, we should just focus on evolving and then how we go about that evolving.
What do you mean?
Like ego's evolving. My ego's evolving. So what if I want to initiate more? Is it going to throw you off?
No, I don't think it's going to throw me off, but I do think that it makes our dynamic
different.
But I also think like our dynamics never, because the relationship is evolving, the dynamic is constantly evolving. It's never the same 2 days.
Yeah.
You know?
So how does that ego come in that sense?
I guess it comes in to, it's not necessarily good or bad, but maybe if you're initiating, that part of my ego is going to be reminded that it needs to compensate.
Or adjust.
Adjust.
From there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Jada's taking the
I'm going to take sales call now.
You're taking you're going to take a sales call?
Oh, so this is a millennial, they said.
If you're going to take the initiative, maybe I need to step up a bit.
Yeah,
you know?
What if you want to nurture more, you know? I think that, yeah.
So I think we cover, like, is ego often seen as good or bad? And
I actually think that it seems like it's more bad in a relationship particularly, or I've experienced or I've seen other people play in a negative way. Then it's more rare to see the positive way than negative, right?
What are negative things in a relationship?
Like I said, being right or wrong. Like I'm right or you're wrong, or you want to prove that you're right.
I do that.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Right. Sometimes I jokingly say that. But it's just everyone wants to be right. Like who doesn't?
Well, like I genuinely, my ego genuinely feels like it's right. Sometimes it can't see black or white, or sometimes it only sees black or white.
Yeah.
I'm saying like this is the way that I believe, and like you can't change that belief in me until otherwise proven.
Yeah, that's totally fine. That's your philosophy. That's your beliefs. But when it gets negative, is that you trying to prove to somebody, or you trying to convince somebody that if I think this is right, you should think this is right too.
You're like forcing it on them.
Yes. Yeah. Or like trying to judge them or trying to correct them. Yeah. I think that's when ego gets bad. I think it's totally fine to have your own agenda in life, you know?
Yeah.
Because life is not black and white, it's just different. We have different views.
And this is not just within our relationship, this is just generally speaking, I think ego brings a lot of unsolicited advice. And I don't think people necessarily want unsolicited advice.
I didn't ask you for that, you know?
I didn't ask for that, you know? Like,
then mine was just simply empathy.
Empathy, but I think it should be approached in a way where you deliver it and you're not, hey bro, you should X, or like, dude, you should try, you know, like, should I try? Like, maybe I haven't even thought about it yet. Yeah,
but sometimes they truly might be like genuinely trying to help somebody. So they did that, you know, they said something like that. But I think it's really comes down to delivery, how you deliver. It says, hey, I hear you and I really understand, but I think if this worked for me, and why don't you try this because I think it'll help you. And that's totally okay.
So it's all in the delivery.
Yeah. So like when you say unsolicited like advice, like those people I've noticed that like, hey, you should do that because it works.
Or because it's working for me.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm not you. And maybe I don't even want to be you. Yeah. So why do I want your advice?
Unless I ask you specifically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you ask like, hey, I need your advice.
Hey,
then you can be like, you know.
But is that our ego?
That is also our ego.
There's no escaping.
I know. Like I said, you just have to accept that we are just ego being. But I think it's more about, like you said, how we use
Okay, I just realized something. I realized where it goes wrong, when it fuels competition. Because you're saying your way is right, or your way is wrong and my way is better. So I'm like more stubborn to accept the advice.
Yeah.
And that's competitive, because what that is saying from an ego standpoint is my identity is more...
It's better.
It's better. My identity or my beliefs,
my
beliefs are better than yours.
Yeah, my life is better than yours. That's honestly the bottom line what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so choose your words.
It's all in the delivery.
Wise.
Yeah.
It's all in the delivery, yeah. But you know, like a lot of times, this is how I evolved from that. I like to feel being right. I mean, like I say, who doesn't? In the beginning of our relationship, or still is sometimes, but I just try to drop that mindset a lot actively. Like, there's no right or wrong. It's just different. It just is. So when I actively think of that, remind myself, I started to think more holistic way. Like I started to think more in expansion. Like I could see that like an ego view, more like instead of me versus you. You know, it's not a competition.
Yeah.
We're a team. So it's like when you think about in relationship, when your ego is trying to like creeping into you in an argument and stuff, it's easily to be egoistic, you know?
I think if you're truly going to eliminate ego, we have to see our relationship as like singular.
Exactly, unity.
It's just one thing.
Yeah.
It's not like
Me versus
I have
you.
to just look at you and say you're like an extension of my reality. It's just one thing, and vice versa.
Yeah. So that's egoless almost. Yeah. Or you think of our ego together. Or we just have to go into nature and freaking meditate for
take
hours.
mushrooms.
I know, that's the best way to
what's your favorite egoless experience?
Definitely psychedelic.
Yeah.
But I've had another egoless experience when I went to silent meditation retreat, 10 days. Yeah. I was very sober, but I had this sense of egoless.
What's that feel like?
That is definitely different than when I'm on shroom. It's not, first of all, it's not intoxicated.
Yeah.
I wasn't intoxicated. I was actually the opposite of intoxicated. It was like a pure clarity, actually. So it was very interesting. It was totally different feeling. And
so if you said lost...
I want to add it. I sense of insane amount of abundance and love energy.
So if it was a loss of ego, did you not feel like yourself? What did you feel like?
I feel like I was just floating being when I was meditating.
You were just more experiencing, like actually present. You weren't living in the past or the future.
No, I was just is.
Yeah.
I was just like, I felt like first of all, I felt like bodiless. I felt like I had no body. And I was just like floating.
So you're only experiencing ego when you're in the past or the future, when you're not in the present moment. Because if you're in the present moment, you can't even, there's no time to think about your identity or what you stand for or what your responsibilities are, because you're just in that thing.
Yeah.
So the more time, so you're saying like if we want to reduce ego within our relationship, then
we have to be present more.
We have to be present.
We have to remind ourselves being present with the person
that
you're next to it. And I agree with that now that I'm thinking of it, because when you're a psychedelic shroom, you also kind of clueless about time and space. Time feels like freaking long. Like the 5 minutes seems like, felt like 5 hours, right? And we're egoless a lot of times on psychedelic, you know? So maybe ego comes with time and space. When we think about our past, or when we're stuck in our past or thinking about future too much, that's when ego plays a role. So when we strive for being in a present moment, being just you and me and as a whole, maybe we can, it might be easier to drop your ego.
What can we do, like,
Good.
tangibly? I guess, like, what tools can we implement to...
Meditation, definitely.
Meditation, yeah.
Meditation together and separately.
Yeah.
We haven't really meditated together in a while.
We haven't. Should we right now? Just take 2 deep breaths. Deep breath in and out. Deep breath in and out. That was nice.
That was nice. I think we should do that every time before we start.
Yeah, I'm good with this video. Thank you, guys.
He's like egoless. Wait, for real?